So, the results of the Makerfield by-election have finally been released, and, well, on the one hand, I predicted accurately that we wouldn't win. You know, based on my experience, I talked about this in my video, I was pretty certain that we would poll somewhere between 6 and 10% of the vote, which, you know, I wasn't wrong about that. But there are a couple things I didn't predict. And there's a lot I feel that I need to talk about. First of all, Andy Burnham won, which we all knew he would. But what I didn't realize is that he would poll in at 55%. 55% of Makerfield constituents. They looked at the past 10 or 20 years of managed decline under the Labour and Tory Uniparty. They looked at all the mass immigration, they looked at all the trash and litter on the side of the road, they looked at all the murderous, crazy, lunatic asylum seekers being put up in their hotels, they looked at all the massive welfare spending and taxation and the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and they thought, you know what, let's have some more of that, shall we? Reform did reasonably well. They got 35%. And, you know what? Restore Britain, we didn't do too badly either. 6.7% more precisely. It's not bad for a new fledgling political party that didn't even exist until a few months ago. All things considered, we had a spectacular ground game. We had an undeniable impact on the politics of Makerfield. We went out and spoke to a lot of different people. We knocked on a lot of doors. We definitely got our message across as best as we could. But unfortunately, it seemed that in this case, even if all of the votes we had, even if we'd snatched all the possible available votes for reform, or if we hadn't even split the right-wing vote, we still wouldn't have won. Andy Burnham is just that popular in Makerfield. It's something that defies belief and comprehension, and yet here we are. And, you know, I predicted that Andy would get at most somewhere between 30 or 35%, maybe late 30s. I never predicted that turnout for Labour would be as high as 55%. I mean, that's just... It was not apparent to me based on my canvassing experience, based on all the responses I got from the door, and based on the signage and the posters that I saw indicating voting intention. It was not apparent to me that Andy Burnham and the Labour Party were that popular. But I guess polling data has its limits. There's only so much you can extrapolate from data. You never truly know what the results are going to be until the dust has settled. But anyway, it's not important that we didn't win, because I said days ago, I did say we're most certainly not going to win, and we need to realign our expectations. I went all the way up to Makerfield precisely because I'd heard time and time again from political pundits that Rupert Lowe and his canvassing team were polling, they were getting data indicating that they had tremendous support from the people of Makerfield, and we were looking at double figures. And I even distinctly remember hearing some people say that they thought we could win. And I was intrigued. to hear this, so I decided I had to go up to Makerfield to see the evidence for myself. And that's exactly what I did. And it seems like they were wrong. I don't know whether the data they recorded was simply inaccurate, or if it was just fantasy, if it was just wishful thinking on behalf of Restore Britain pollsters. I think it's pretty clear a lot of the people who predicted that Restore Britain would win, they were not there in Makerfield. I've got a lot of respect for Sargon, for Carl Benjamin, and the Lotus Eaters, but I had to roll my eyes a lot of the time when I saw their coverage saying, yeah, we can do this, we're going to win, we've got this. I don't actually know if Sargon explicitly said we're going to win, but it was pretty clear based on his tone, based on his excited enthusiasm. He must have thought, the thought must have crossed his mind that we could win. But anyway, moments like this, they are a sobering reality check. They are a wake-up call for the reality of living in an electoral democracy under a two-party system, under a first-past-the-post system. The first-past-the-post system is unforgiving towards new political parties that try and break the mold. And it's not like none of us were aware of that going in. For decades, for generations, every single electoral cycle has been dominated by one of two rival factions, Labour and the Conservatives. And the Conservative vote appears to have already broken down. And we all saw during the 2024 general election how under Rishi Sunak, loads of Tory voters didn't even bother to turn up. And Labour, they won the election by a landslide, so they say, but no, it wasn't by an electoral landslide. It's just that the Conservatives' voter base completely imploded. So I had reason to believe then that we were beginning to witness the end of the two-party duopoly. But sadly, regrettably, moments like this make you realize that there are still many people who are invested in keeping and maintaining the status quo. It's extraordinary, it's demoralizing, it's most unfortunate, but sadly, that's just the way things are. Anyway, the important takeaway though is this. We need to realign our expectations with hard evidence, with our own personal experiences and what is likely, with what is feasible. We ought to stop chasing results that are pie in the sky. We may even need to set back our horizons and say we might not be able to win the 2029 general election, but we could definitely gun for the 2033 election. It's honestly, I was still amazed. I was absolutely blown away by Great Yarmouth First's resounding, spectacular victory in the council elections. I predicted we'd win a plurality of seats. I didn't predict that we'd win all of them. Certainly not by a significantly huge margin. So I think a lot of us, we were caught up in the hype. We were caught up in the victorious fervour of having already won a spectacular victory in the council elections. Council elections, they always turn out differently to general elections, don't they? The logic of the two-party system of people tribalizing and voting tactically, that never really applies in council elections, does it? This is just one of those things that you only tend to see in a first past the post voting system, but you don't really see in a country that has proportional representation. But anyway, each different electoral system, each system and mode of democracy has its own flaws. And that this is ours, and this is just what we've got to work with, But we still did bloody well. We did a damn fine job. I'm proud of everyone who turned out to Makerfield. I'm proud of everyone who knocked on doors and delivered leaflets. Our candidate, Rebecca Shepherd, maybe she wasn't the most polished, maybe she wasn't the most erudite when speaking in front of a camera, but honestly, we're not looking for polished in this day and age. We're looking for people whose hearts are invested in their community. People who are local and from the area. And honestly, Rebecca Shepherd as a candidate, you could have done worse. Really, the only advantage that Andy Burnham had over all of his rival competitors is that he was already a known quantity. You know, he'd been famous as the Greater Manchester Mayor for several years. And of course, I sense that there was a lot of tactical voting. See, my theory, my opinion is, anyway, my thinking is, the people of Makerfield most likely voted in Andy Burnham because he wasn't Keir Starmer. It's no secret that Keir Starmer is one of the least popular prime ministers, certainly in modern history, but quite possibly in the entire country's history. And I imagine there's a lot of people who would jump at the chance to see the back of him. And Andy Burnham has publicly positioned himself as being a contender for the new Labour leadership. Lots of people have talked about this. If you remember, months ago, Andy Burnham wanted to stand in the Gorton and Denton by-election a few months ago, but Starmer vetoed. He blocked him. And now that Burnham has finally gone in and he's secured his position as a Labour MP, an elected Member of Parliament, and now that he's eligible to take on the leadership in a leadership contest, now that that's happened, the chips are down, the gauntlet is thrown. Is he going to take over the Labour leadership and possibly become our next Prime Minister? I have to say, the prevailing thinking, I think the prevailing logic among the Labour Party and the powers that be is that Andy Burnham will be a successful, I'm trying to think, he will be a rebranding attempt of the Labour Party, because they're probably thinking, nobody likes Keir Starmer, but if we get somebody who's more popular, somebody whose nickname for many years has been the King of the North, you know, like in that Game of Thrones show, somebody who's more old left, somebody who represents more the old Labour before the new Labour took over, maybe this can win back popularity for the Labour Party. Well, that seems to be the prevailing mood. I didn't realise that there were so many people in Makerfield who apparently thought this way, but it might explain if people were so utterly convinced that Starmer was a liability, and the sooner they got rid of him, the better, then maybe that could explain why Burnham secured over half of the vote share. I don't know, you know, who can say? It's a possibility. By my reckoning, I'd say it's the most likely possibility, because I didn't get the overall impression that Burnham was that popular. I've heard at least 2 constituents complain about him and his wife's dodgy business dealings with those speed cameras, those ANPR cameras. But anyway, as I said earlier, we need to realign our expectations with what is feasible. We secured 6.7% of the vote, which is not bad for a new political party. And from this point onwards, our vote share and popularity can really only go up. And Reform's popularity, meanwhile, is starting to decline. Because we're already winning people over. We're winning over hearts and minds with regards to our attitude to mass deportations and immigration. We are shifting the Overton window. We're introducing ideas into the mainstream which previously would have been considered intolerable. And I happen to think that there was a very clear reason why the BBC elected not to have our candidate appear on BBC Question Time. I'm sorry, I just don't see it as an accident. Like, if we weren't a threat to the established order, why would they feel the need to do that? And the more time we spend campaigning, especially given now the release of the rape gang inquiry, which is recently, the results of which have recently just come out, the more time we spend trying to bring our issues to the fore, the more people are going to hear about us, and the more other politicians from other parties, they're going to have to contend with our talking points. They can't keep us silent forever. And the more we get the conversation going, you know, the more we'll get ordinary people talking. And like I said earlier, we can win the battle of ideas. We don't necessarily need to win elections to gain influence. We just need to change the conversation and change the ideas. And sometimes you got to play the long game. Sometimes you got to lose the battle to win the war. So, my message to all Restore Britain canvassers, to all of us who went out there and got people voting, those of us who knocked on doors, keep your heads up. You guys did a fantastic job. We did the best we could. We did the best we damn well could. It's not like Reform can't even blame us for splitting the vote, because they wouldn't have won the popular vote anyway. And it's not like Reform's votes are getting any larger. Their popularity is already on the decline. I mean, Keir Starmer's already made this point public. People are flocking away from Reform and turning to us. Reform are hemorrhaging support because they are taking on the exact Tory apparatchiks who brought about this managed decline in the first place. So, all in all, let's take this in stride. It was a valiant effort. At least we won our deposit back, which is more than can be said for any other party that scored less than us, like the Tories, the Lib Dems, and the Greens. But we should reconvene. We should plan, re-strategize, focus on changing the conversation, and the next time we see a battle that we reckon we can take on and win, well, we do the same thing, but we try again and we don't give up. Anyway, that's all I have to say about the Makerfield by-election. This has been Tracking. You guys take care.